Welcome everybody to CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini.
I'm Joe Osmendi.
Yeah, it's always good to hang out with you.
You too. You too.
And we want to welcome all of you to the program. And I want to point out before we start, we have a great guest. His name is Tom Scurria. You're going to love meeting him. We have sponsorship opportunities available here at RVN TV, our program. We'd love to have you as a sponsor. There are 40 other programs on the network. Email to production@rvntv.tv if you'd like more information, or call 856-581-4172. And hopefully we'll get to join you here as a sponsor on our program. And Tom Scurria.
Thank you.
How are you?
It's great to be back. It's great
That's right. We interviewed you about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is catching up on some new things that you're doing. And there are a number of things on your lower third that, all of which we're going to talk about. There's a man who is wearing many hats. But we're going to start with the hat of Executive Leaders for Advisory Boards. That's ELAB. So maybe you could tell us what that is?
Sure. Executive Leaders for Advisory Boards, I'm going to give you kind of the mission, which is really to help companies in the Mid-Atlantic region overcome growth obstacles in all the phases of growth and how companies start from startup to mature companies. So that's the general kind of overarching view. The way to do that is really to have assembled a group of executives, all experienced, all vetted, all know each other, that really want to give back in terms of helping companies overcome all the mistakes or all the changes or all the obstacles or the great things they've done over the lives of companies, to have them overcome those obstacles and go through those various growth stages that they've been experienced to.
Great. So people who are watching our program may be owners of small businesses or medium-sized businesses. They may be just starting up. They might be a mature company. What ELAB can do for them is to put together a team of seasoned professionals with experience in areas that are appropriate for the issues they're currently facing.
Yep, no, and I think what's key to understand it, the genesis of it, who started it, because it kind of works back into why it's doing what it's doing.
Right.
I believe you had Candida Cisak.
We have had Candida Cisak on the program.
A couple of shows before, and it's really her baby, and she was really the person who came up with the idea. And if you know her, and I know you do know her from a lot of years, she's one of the most...
She's the godmother. We call her
the godmother. She's probably one of the most well-respected, well-networked, and just a good, nice person.
A good person, a real, definitely.
And those things are really important because I think it shapes what this organization is intending to do and what we're doing. You know, she's had phenomenal background. She's been a CIO, a CFO. She's worked with Big Four consulting firms. She's worked with big technology companies. So she's played a lot of roles. She now has her own consulting firm, which is really focused in the strategy area. And as over the years she's done this, every year she's had companies or people approach her about creating advisory boards or don't even know they exist. And so she's gone through over the years, and I think she says 2 to 3 a year, she's doing it on her own. She's created these advisory boards, and she suddenly realized that in the greater Atlantic or Mid-Atlantic area, there's a market here that's grossly underserved. So that was the genesis of her idea of how do I pull together a team of people to address that need. So that's really where and it's important as we go forward in the discussion as to why we're doing what we're doing.
That's where that comes from. Okay, so let me help you out by misunderstanding what it is you do. Although I think I have a pretty good idea. There are people out there, let's say, and you mentioned before the program, maybe 32,000 companies in the Philadelphia area that could be candidates. An advisory board is not a board of directors. It is pulled together based on skill set and experience and background, aimed at a particular set of issues that a company might be facing. Most companies don't take advantage of advisory boards. They might have a board of directors, but not an advisory board. An advisory board really is literally about giving advice to solve problems and help companies level up. Am I getting that right?
You've nailed it. A traditional board, say, has a lot of fiduciary responsibility. An advisory board position wouldn't. That doesn't mean you ultimately couldn't migrate from an advisory board position, be hired, or be brought on the board of directors.
Sure.
It is really assembling a package of people to address particular strategic needs or business needs that a company might have. We're focused on small to mid-sized companies. As I said, there's about 32,000 of them in the Atlantic area, with a diverse group of people who cut across a whole series of business functions.
Right.
And business verticals, and almost a matrix, and we can talk more about that. How it was
that's exciting. So, and it's my favorite F word, free. That's the part that I think is so impressive. It really is about giving this advice to companies to help them grow. And that's such a great way to start a real relationship that could stretch potentially over many years.
Absolutely. I think what's important, there are several national organizations that create boards, and some of them are very well known. There's a couple that are West Coast based that are, I would call subscription. One's more of a staffing kind of program, but you would get online, fill out a form, you start getting interviewed, you may get a phone call, but really what they promise to do is give you for a fee, on a monthly fee, they'll give you a list of potential board situations. They're profit making,
Right.
certainly that particular situation. Where we are here is, everybody here has either been handpicked by Candida or the group now that's interviewing people. They're proven, they're successful, they all know each other. They've got a powerful network in the Philadelphia area. We're not for profit. ELAB gets nothing for any of this. So if someone gets placed on a board, that's between the advisor
That's between
and
them
the company.
and I might meet somebody on this advisory board that I want to continue to work with, and that's a deal I can make with them.
That's between you and them. This is purely, it may almost sound too altruistic. You've got a group of very powerful, experienced, I like to say, put through the crucible people. You've got founders, owners, entrepreneurs,
Right.
global executives who have encountered virtually every obstacle and every opportunity to grow businesses. They're trusted, they're strategic in their thinking, they're insightful. They've proved it, they've done it.
And there are like 50 of them. I mean, it's a big group.
It's a big
You pull
group.
together a very large group of
but
skilled people.
Yeah, it's purposely held at 50 because, and we'll talk more about how it was developed and structured. But these are people that have been more successful. They've all been, they've experienced the highs and lows. There's not an obstacle or a stumble or an issue, be it business, finance, that they haven't encountered, and they want to give back. I always talk when we've had a lot of conversation of feeding the beast, and we talked about my passion for history.
Sure, and
I
we
gotta
will
keep,
again.
I got to keep on feeding this, and these people are all this way. Boundless curiosity. They're people, but they're specialists down various categories. But the one other thing I think it's really important is they all know each other as one thing, but they're passionate.
I can speak to that because
About
I've been
what
to
they do. You've been
an
exposed
ELAB
to
meeting and I see that. I think
Those
that's-
are all key. It sounds too good to be true, but it's not.
But it isn't true, and it actually exists in this area. And a little later on, you'll tell everybody how they can reach you so that you can give them more information.
Certainly.
But it's important to remember that maybe 1 or 2% of companies out there who need an advisory board actually have one. Most think that they have a board and that's good enough. And what excites me about this is that where my board of directors will tell me that I'm not making enough money, that's pretty much their job. An advisory board will tell me how I can make more money. They'll help me find a way out of that hole that the board of directors has found me in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to deal on the positives, the growth. This is really
Sure.
all about growth. And how we all evolve as people and as companies. Companies all have an arc. They start at a situation where they're a startup. Founder comes up with a great idea, it actually works, and they're running around with their heads chopped off, and they may be the creative person.
Right.
Okay? So they came up with this concept. They move to the expansion phase where suddenly it's starting to work, it's catching on, and we're just throwing spaghetti against the wall, we're growing like hell. That's beautiful. Growth covers a lot of problems that just normally occur in the evolution of companies.
Right.
So you next move on to the professionalization curve, we'll call it, or structure, where they're bringing in experts in various levels, functional areas. They're now starting to capture data. They're bringing in systems. The next logical phase is consolidation. Well, let's clean this up a little bit. We've got this professionalization. Then the next typical area is, I would call diversification. Maybe we go and add new markets, new products, new services. And that has a whole bunch of organizational issues.
Right.
Then as you go to the end, it's really maturity and revitalization. So I'm kind of giving you those swim lanes, we'll call it, of the companies. That group of 50 has been, there's somebody that's been through every one of those phases.
You've got
and some
somebody
of them
who can swim in each one of those lanes.
who's swimming them, has seen the obstacles,
Got
seen
it.
the challenges, and at the end of the day, come out the other side growing.
That's great.
That's what's key.
So you've got some ELAB members that specialize in commercial real estate. I met 1 or 2 of those. You've got some digital technology specialists. You've got some banking specialists. You've got a lot of people with serious operational experience in both for-profit and not-for-profit, because I've met all of them. So there pretty much isn't any issue out there or any growth plan out there that couldn't be served by a board that's pulled together by ELAB at no cost to the client, which is incredible to me.
Yeah, we'll talk about maybe later on how some of the ways we're getting the word out, and this is one of the ways to get it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's essentially at no cost to the client. We're creating some vehicles to get that word out. More importantly.
Okay.
And as we get there.
So it's like the Avengers. What's your superpower? You. What do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah.
I have a separate company that after I jokingly say I've had the benefit of living through finance, operations, marketing, leverage through a leverage buyout, which taught me about ownership and ownership culture. And then starting my own company about 12 years ago, word out of the gate as a franchisee of a major food chain, and then live and survive the downturn.
Okay.
Good for you.
Which those of us who have been through that.
You learn a lot from experience like that.
You get very good at renegotiation, talking,
Sure.
Begging, structuring.
What it takes, whatever it takes.
And I've made payroll out of my own pocket.
Okay.
If you're an owner or you're a startup guy and you came up with that concept and now you're growing this country,
You know how that
the
feels.
company, you need to understand what an ownership culture means. And what I really try to do is, hey, let's get everybody talking the same mission, vision,
Right.
and then let's just do the obvious. Every action, every compensation structure, everything that's done is to deliver one thing, on the value and the growth. Every company, because they're run by humans, they get that chatter in the system, in those 5 or 6 phases of growth. It's just aligning that and making sure everything we do. I can talk more about some of the metaphors I use to do that later on if we want.
We like all those metaphors. Those are all good. This is the International House of Metaphors. That's what we do here. But isn't it though?
Absolutely.
So,
Not the founder.
But let me see if I can kind of boil this all down. We got somebody who's watching the program and they're thinking, right? You know, I meet with my board once a quarter, and that's helpful, and it's necessary. It's required. But I really feel like I'm doing this alone. I feel like I'm in this by myself. And what I really need is to talk to some people who have been where I am maybe before and can help me find a way forward that I may not be able to find totally on my own. It's not because I'm at fault. It's not because it's not out of weakness. In fact, it's a strength to pull over and ask for directions. So a strength that you can find inside yourself is to give ELAB a call. And what I have in my head is it's kind of like the old Mission Impossible where you've got kind of a brochure with a whole bunch of headshots in it. You pull together the team that you believe is most appropriate based on the first call that you have. And I guess you're, as part of the inner circle at ELAB, the board of ELAB, your job, I guess, is to pull those teams together for people. Is that right? Or at least in part?
In part, we're participating. The Teamers group, I think it's important to answer this question, why is it structured the way it was? And it really was structured, and I think it goes to answering all those potential areas you might have issues.
Right.
Where we looked
All
at
my bad metaphors, by the way, but go on.
But really, we looked at functional areas, functional categories, business development, which could cover things like accounting, sales channels, acquisitions, divestitures. The next area would be finance, which how do you finance? How do you buy something? How do you look at this whole series of projects? How do you value things? Again, county, tax are key in there. You've got insurance specialists, functional specialists, property, life, all the medical, life, what have you. How do insurance companies insure? How is self-insurance an issue? How do they lay off risk? Because that impacts how you're priced. We have specialists that understand that. We've got strength in the legal side. From a startup, how do you structure a company? LC, LP, subchapter S, corporation. How do you structure it going in so when you want to get out, it's structured correctly?
That's
all
important.
tax implications. We have people in patent lawyers. We have people that have been experienced in big-time litigation, understand arbitration, litigation, understand how to deal with the IRS. So that's another specialty.
Right.
We got a group of people I would say are focused on operations. So now I got a product. How do I deliver it?
How do I
the
deliver that
service?
product?
There's
Right.
loads of situations and opportunities where you can increase cost or drive it, or how do you synchronize operations with sales?
Right.
Those basic kind of things.
We got to synchronize
Yeah,
a break.
we have to synchronize the break. You had to jump in with that, didn't you?
Well, we had to do that.
We'll be right back. But I think it's such it's what makes the model as interesting as it is building competency around some of these issues for a company is it's free.
Absolutely.
And so we'll be back after these messages with Tom Scurria and more CEO Chat. Welcome back to CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini.
I'm Joe Osmendi.
And our guest today is Tom Scurria of Executive Leaders for Advisory Boards, plus a bunch of other companies. I know you've got your own consulting firm, and I want to talk about all that too. But where we left this conversation, I think just before the break, was that Executive Leaders for Advisory Boards is a solution-making company, a company that you can call in to help you at whatever stage of growth you might be in, whatever your circumstances might be. You might be in great shape, but there's a level up that you can get to. Yeah. And ELAB can help you get there, and the business model is zero cost to the client. Yeah. And it could be several meetings before anything.
Yeah, we're actually not a company, we're a group of advisors.
It's a not-for-profit.
Not-for-profit, which is very important. Before we broke, while we were talking about how we assembled this group of people to address the issues in the areas that might come up. And it's very fascinating because a lot of thought process went into this. Candida started this in 2014. Now we're really rolling it forward, and I need to explain why it took a while. It was very important.
Sure.
Because we had to assemble a group of executives, and I think before the break we were talking about business development, finance, insurance, and legal. And there's more on that. You've got the operations part. I think we started to talk on. So think of this grid. You got this functional requirements across the top. The next one would be organizational development. Things like, how do you structure compensation, executive management, executive coaching, those kinds of things, which is huge in terms of, we talked about earlier, organizational or ownership culture DNA. So that would be the next area. The area after that, strategy and planning, which is kind of in some ways overarching. And how do you pull all this together, and how do you, one of the things you got to be constantly looking is 3, 5, 10 years down the road. My mind just always works that way. Or trying to anticipate competitors or competitors that aren't there, or technology changes, really important. All done with I call it cash flow realville. Somebody also is running models on this, just a little reality check. I'm not a big numbers guy in that sense. And the last, and today, certainly not the least, is technology. Everything's about technology. We don't have to evolve and talk what has to happen. So you had those functional areas across the top. The rest of the group is industry specialization. And we've grouped it on really, I would call them 22 SIC codes. And I apologize to you for reading, but I think it's important as to how some of these people were pulled together. And we cover areas of aerospace, defense, agriculture, business services, consumer products to name, financial services, energy, government, federal, government, state and local. Healthcare, life sciences, manufacturing, media, I'm missing some, not-for-profits, real estate construction, real estate development, retail, software technology, telecommunications, transportation and hospitality, wholesale distribution. So there was a conscious effort to build this group with as little overlap as possible, but get the best people out there that did it. So you got, imagine this chart matrix, and we're dropping people into that. Now these people have, just incredible background. A lot of them have lived through leverage buyouts, they've been in private equity, they've dealt in how to develop properties, they've dealt in depth in HR. So we kind of built this structure. So imagine you've got this team of people. And one of the tools we're using, we would call it client nurturing, is how to get the inflow, the inbound. So we have, we've gone through, redone the website, we now have a group LinkedIn page, but we've also created this vehicle called Growth Company Catalyst. And what it is, and you kept on saying it, free. Company who has issues or wants to address their challenges, they have growth, or they want input from a bunch of different people with expertise down one of those matrices or area, can contact us, and for the price of a breakfast or a lunch they might pay for, we'll get as many advisors that might make sense for them, sit down for an hour or two, put out their thoughts, put their strategy plans, their challenges, and strike up a dialogue and get new ideas or approaches or thought process. At the end of that meeting, if they choose to want to have a further relationship with somebody in that meeting, if they want to create an advisory board or put them on an advisory board or just use them otherwise to pick their brains, that's between the advisor and the company. Executive leaders for advisory boards gets nothing.
Is essentially out of that process.
It's out of the process.
Right.
We're not raising
Good.
money, we're not fundraising, we're not looking for sponsorship. It truly is going back to what I said may have been an altruistic approach. These are people who want to give back and need to feed the beast and need to keep on being exposed to new companies or new concepts or new challenges. It costs nothing.
Nothing. So companies can, for free, can get 1 or 2 actionable ideas out of a breakfast meeting, talking to people who've been down the road and around the block for decades in many cases.
Yeah.
At no charge to them, no cost to them. And even if they never call you or talk to you again, they can walk away from that breakfast with 2 or 3 things they can do
Or
that
people
could
to-
change the game in a way that
Or
makes a
people to
difference.
approach. And again, I would, the wealth of knowledge here, people on this group that fit, there are Big 4 prior consulting firm people.
Right.
There are entrepreneurs, there are people that have started their own companies, there are people that are big companies, small companies. You know, it's the entire breadth. There's almost a third part to that matrix, and it's size, swim lanes, those
Right.
where you are in it. Somebody in that 50-person group has been there, and there's some overlap, so you get more than one person that may be able to help you.
And you may have an issue that involves 2 or 3 areas of expertise, and that's what the board aspect of it is about.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that's great. And their ideas bouncing off each other can actually amplify the solution.
I've sat through these meetings. Fascinating to watch this team interact and watch this group. And you may get different views from the same people, from people in the group, which is very helpful.
You can't
Is there a
lose.
significance to the number 50 that you have?
There is. It's going back to how it was assembled. We wanted a hand-picked group that was proven, has a great network, and it's known. I mean, we all know each other
Right.
in the area. When you start growing organizations, 100 and more, this is a very specific vision.
Okay.
Built for that.
Built
And
for that.
Ultimately, the answer to the question is 49 is not enough, and 51 is
51
too many. So,
But it purposely was done to get this. This is an extremely well-connected group. You start taking organization. We don't want to fall into the challenge that some of these growth companies
No,
have done.
sure,
That's not our
sure.
purpose.
Right. You
You
don't
get
wanna- you
100,
don't wanna
150
cause,
more. There's vision, mission creep. That's not what we
No,
want.
no,
This
no,
is
you
a
don't want
very
that.
clear vision.
Well,
That's what was to happen.
good. It's a great group of people, and they're very approachable and nice people. I mean, they're people that are willing to give and easy to talk to, and nobody's judging. Nobody's. It's not a weakness on your part that you have to make this call. It's a strength. What you get back is real wisdom, not just knowledge, but wisdom. We talked about that. Now, I know in your lower third there are a couple of other logos, and before we run out of time, I want to talk about first of all, leadership DNA. You mentioned that explains the DNA on the screen
Yeah.
lower third. Talk about that for a bit.
I have the company I current consulting is called IAWL Advisory LLC, and we talked about this a long time ago. It's a wonderful life is where the acronym
Oh, yeah,
came
yeah,
from.
yeah. Right. Uh-huh.
But really, as I said earlier, I had the benefit of living in a big conglomerate, living through a leveraged buyout, brilliantly managed company that forced ownership down. Joe Neubauer, who was the chairman at the time, he didn't have to do it. At a young age, I was forced to second mortgage my house. The house was already over mortgaged.
Right.
In the go-go days of the early 90s, when Drexel Burnham and interest rates were 15%, and I was scared to death. But I took the leap. As soon as I took the leap, I was an owner as far as I was concerned.
Well,
I wasn't
right.
a W-2. And everything I've done and did with that company going forward in areas of finance, planning, operations, were all with an ownership bent. And I realized everything you talked about and thought about was an ownership bent. Left in 2003, started my own company in the franchising, and the way we built the compensation structure and motivation, again, is around ownership. And the frontline manager in one of those stores, because I've got a lot of risk, he's got a lot of risk, he's got a lot of upside potential in his compensation structure. I wanted him to be joined at the hip with me.
Sure.
View it like me, own it.
Wow.
So you get that's that whole ownership culture DNA.
DNA. That explains the DNA, and the wings are "It's a Wonderful Life." That's the talk about the wings real quick.
You know how many wings there are you can choose when you're making a business logo?
I had no idea. I'll Google it later, and I'm sure there
But
are a
for
lot.
those of you who haven't seen It's a Wonderful Life, there's Clarence the angel, and he wings his wings by saving Jimmy Stewart at the back end of the movie. It's the best Christmas movie ever made. Still brings a tear. It's the last one we watch every year with my wife and I.
Oh, that's great.
In the home theater downstairs, and still
And the point is, the way you become an angel is by helping somebody else.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
really it. So
Life's
that whole idea of
wonderful. I
paying
mean,
it
it is
forward.
wonderful.
I mean, hard to see you as an angel. I see you more as an Avenger with the green mask and the blue hat and the bow and arrow.
I've had many names thrown at me, but
That
I
might be
won't
his
go there.
But I think that, so you're also available, the point being that you're also a consultant in your own right. And so there may be people who have a particular need in your area of expertise. Maybe you can outline that, characterize that quickly for everybody.
Well, again, my background, I was kind of blessed. More the strategy and planning side, because I got exposed to the strategic planning group, the planning group, looking at literally dozens of business plans, strat plans across multiple lines of business. So that was a huge education. Looking at the market, evaluating market potential. So that was a great experience. I was also heavily involved in things like hedging interest rate debt, off-balance sheet financing, lease financing. So I'm a numbers person.
Okay.
So I get that, but I also get that all things, we got to live in cash. I call it cash flow realville. Business plans or strat plans are great for somebody looking at the numbers. The thing that really thrilled me in my career, and it still does, I really enjoy more the people and resource issues. So I actually ended up operating about $150 million worth of business for Aramark, which was the most fun I had.
Wow.
Although
great.
I'm a numbers nerd, and I got to fight
You're
that.
a numbers nerd, but it's really ultimately about the people, and you know that, and that's...
So to answer your question, I've been blessed in my career across various visions and experience. So if you say specialty, it really is strategic planning, business planning, but understanding all those business functionality areas.
Right.
I'm not an expert in every one of them. My strength is finance. But understanding that and bringing that to a founder or a company that doesn't have those expertise or didn't involve there.
In a way that makes a difference to them, is that's what you're about. We're coming up on the end of the program. Before we wrap up, though, I know you're a history buff, and Joe here has lived through most of human history. Real quick, recommend one book. If somebody's going to read a great book on history, what would be a great book?
Oh, that's a tough one. And I usually go to the more recent one. There was just a recent biography done by Chernow, who did Hamilton, did Washington. The Washington one's phenomenal, by the way. But it was done on Grant.
Really?
Fascinating piece of history. And you will have more respect for Ulysses S. Grant. And you may have a lot of less respect for other organizations in the world, which I won't go into.
No point of that, right?
That's the great part of experiencing history at depth like that is to a lot of what you think you know, you really don't know.
Yeah, and the depth of what Chernow does, he starts from when he's born. So you get a totally different feel and flavor. And he does the same thing with Hamilton, and he does the same thing with Washington. You need to go into that kind of nuance to understand what drove these people, made them think the way they were, and why they were so successful, and how they kept focused on the big picture. They didn't lose the strategy. Grant is fascinating. He really is. And how he handled the Civil War and working with Lincoln, and how he conquered the West.
Great advice. Now, real quick before this program becomes history, take a look in the camera and tell everybody how they can reach you to learn more.
Really, advisoryboards.org is executive leaders for advisory boards. That's where I'd go and focus, and you get all the contact information. There's a way to inbound if you've got information, start a conversation. You'll see on the website. My, again, is IAWL Advisory, is my website.net, and would love to speak with any of you. And keep this conversation going, because the fun is in the conversation too, and finding and learning about other people and what they know and experience levels, and sharing that.
It's terrific. That's great.
It's that feeding of the beast, as I call it.
There is no reason not to call. You can learn a lot from it. Costs you nothing. And Tom Scurria,
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Great interview.
Thank you, Tom.
We'll come
Thanks
back.
for joining us
and
today.
do it again.
Oh yeah, definitely, no question. But next time with success stories, how things work
Absolutely.
out. Yeah, that'd be great.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks all of you for joining. What's your name again?
Joe Osamendi.
And I was, I'm Alcini. See, that's a little thing we do for each
we
other.
do. Absolutely.
We'll see you again next week, and have a happy Memorial Day weekend. Be safe, and talk to you again next week with more CEO
Next
Chat.
week. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Thank you.